Yesterday, I received a message from someone asking me to delve a little bit deeper into a specific subject. So here we go. And let's call this the trauma trap. Now, what happens, and we've explained this many times, but it's essential that everyone really truly understand this. When we experience a trauma, and the trauma is not what happened to us, it's how it gets internalized inside us that is the trauma. There was a situation or an action or a circumstance that caused us to feel and respond in a certain way. And the trauma part happens when we don't ever downgrade from the hypersensitive situation that happened. And those feelings, those emotions, that actual energy gets trapped within our bodies, and it just stays there, and it circulates and it circulates and it circulates. Now, often what happens, and this can be whether it's a huge significant trauma or whether it's a series of micro traumas, which are just the same thing happening over and over, whether that's our needs not being met, whether that is us feeling like we have to hide a piece of ourselves to fit in. And at a young age, we do that not only just to fit in because it's socially acceptable, we do it for survival. So trauma tends to be a survival reaction, and it is a natural reaction to not having our needs met or to having to disassociate a part of ourselves to fit in. Now, one of the things that happens, and why we'll call this a trauma trap, is because depending on what age this happens or what emotional state of development we are at when the trauma or the repeating trauma occurs, we can literally get, not only is that energy trapped, but we can literally get trapped emotionally at that age, at that stage of development. And this is not a judgment in any way. This is just, again, it's a normal, natural thing that happens because of trauma. So I don't want you to judge yourself based on this information. But when we have trapped, unresolved energy or those trauma loops inside our body that we don't actively engage to dissipate, to heal, we can end up responding to both related and unrelated situations to that trauma from the intellectual or emotional age of when the trauma happened. So I know we've all seen this, and we've all seen it in ourselves. We've all done this, where something happens and our response to it is exaggerated. It's not really in correlation with the stage in our life that we are now, but our response is the same as we responded to the pain that we were experiencing that caused the trauma initially. And we end up revisiting and living in that pain, and no longer are we processing the information of where we are truly at. We are reliving our trauma, and we are looking at the current situation based on the past traumatic experiences. So it literally does become a trap. And we sometimes wonder why we struggle so much to get ahead, to move ahead, to uncover more of ourselves, to achieve the successes and the goals and and to find new inspiration to move forward, it's because we are responding from an intellectual or emotional age that doesn't have the capacity to process what we are trying to achieve, and it can only re-experience itself over and over and over. Now, like I said, we have all done this. We have all experienced this in ourselves. Take some time to think about it. We've all observed it and probably judged it in somebody else. And through compassionate awareness, through consciously experiencing physically where we are reacting from, that gives us a really good starting place to unravel the trauma loop, to free up that energy, and to start making forward momentum in our lives. And sometimes, I will say this, we have to go backward and heal that trauma and rediscover our own inherent innocence, our own inner beauty, before we can move forward in setting goals, in setting intentions, in creating the life that we want. And you wouldn't give a 4-year-old the keys to your brand new car and say, okay, you're in charge now, off you go, let's take us in the direction that you want to go, and expect to experience anything but another trauma when the car crashes into the garbage cans or whatever. Chances are you probably wouldn't even get out of the driveway. But we do this all the time when we live from our triggers and when we live from our unhealed trauma. And when we start really working on the initial pain and healing that and releasing that energy, that frees up an enormous amount of energy that can start catapulting us literally into the type of life that we want and that we are dreaming about, and the type of relationships that we want and the dreaming about, and the type of self-love that we want and are dreaming about. But we have to get out of the trauma trap first. And like I said, the trauma trap almost always keeps us trapped at the point where the trauma happened. And so it doesn't make sense with the rest of our lives as we continue to age and mature and our lives progress. The responses that we have to circumstances are based on something that not only happened a long time ago or happened repeatedly a long time ago, but from a place that is not really capable of doing what we want it to do. And by healing those traumatic wounds that we carry in our physicality, releasing that energy, we start to re-experience the magic of life and the creative process of life. And we start to see ourselves and the world in brand new ways that we weren't able to see before. And that doesn't mean the world wasn't like that before. We weren't able to see it before. We weren't able to see ourselves before as empowered, as triumphant, as unlimited, because we've been limited by a belief system that can be decades and decades and decades and decades old, or even beyond that, into inherited family trauma, into ancestral trauma. So This is where I want to emphasize the importance of dealing with your trauma honestly and sincerely and compassionately from where you're at, as opposed to trying to make your life circumstances change without that being healed, because the trap will always draw us back in. So if you find that you're caught in a trauma trap, I encourage you to start doing some gentle and compassionate exploration. I encourage you to reach out to someone who can be of assistance in not oh poor you kinds of ways, but in really getting to the root cause of what is going on and helping you heal from it. And a facilitator, a coach, a therapist can be an amazing asset for you if you find you're experiencing this type of thing happening in your life. So gently take a look and examine without judgment. Like, there is no judgment involved here. What is happening, like I said, it's a normal, natural reaction when our survival needs are threatened or are not met, and we get trapped emotionally in the patterns of fight or flight or flee or fawn. And all of those have different ways they show up in our lives currently, in our interactions with ourselves, in our interactions with others. And there is a way out of the trap. That's the exciting part. So I encourage you to take notice of your trauma traps without judgment, and I encourage you to start taking action to heal and release that stored energy, and just watch the magical difference that it will make in your life as you do so. Much love. I hope that addresses the topic sufficiently for just a short little video, as the question was asked to me. If you have any questions that you'd like, or comments or suggestions about topics that you would like to explore, drop them in the comments below. I'm happy to do that. And again, I am happy to reach out and work with any of you who are ready to take the step out of the trauma trap. Love you all sincerely. Have a great day.